Okay, well, let's do the upper best to bring it here. I have been in the market on AI, I'm just bringing up the slides, for about 30 years. So it was part of my studies. And to be very honest, normally this wasn't going to be the book that I was going to be writing. Because I have been working for different multinationals, SAP, Microsoft, etc., a lot of the times in e-commerce. And I thought, well, turning 50, let me write a book about survival in the corporate zoo as a woman. That was my initial instinct. So I went to the editor and I said, look, I have a good idea. I'm going to write a book. And she goes like, this is not the first book you're going to write. This is going to be your second book because you are going to first write something about AI. I'm like, well, there's so many books already out there. Why should I do that? And I asked them to give me 2 weeks. I said, give me 2 weeks and I'll come back to you with a yes or a no. And in these 2 weeks, I was giving sessions like these and I was sitting in debates. And I said, to myself, let's listen to the questions that are out there in the audience to see how good people have understood AI. One of these sessions was with the Prime Minister of Belgium, Alexander De Croo, and a person asked him, so if AI goes wrong, so if the decision is wrong, who is responsible? And he took the microphone and he said, well, that's normal, that's the engineer. And I'm like sitting there as engineer, I'm like, no, it's not the engineer. AI is really something, if you're going to apply this in your company, that needs a multidisciplinary approach. And so I had a couple of moments like these in these 2 weeks, and I said, okay, let me write this book. And in the meantime, the book is out there in 4 different languages. And that's going to be the storyline also as well, is bring you a balanced story about AI towards business, okay? First of all, when you talk about AI, which is very much a hype word, you need to understand that it once started as an academic discipline. It started in the years 50, where actually just 4 scientists were sitting together and they said, well, we've automated already all the physical activity of a human. Let's try to automate the human thinking. Let's try to create systems that have the ability to learn by themselves without having a programmer who programs line after line after line. So that was the original idea. It went through a couple of ups and downs. As you can see it, we call them the summers and the winters of AI, before getting a steep growth around the 92, 93. And the reason was that at that point in time, the internet was opened up for everybody. So the internet came with a lot of data, new type of data, images, voices, etc. But additionally, around the same time, compute power was strong enough to go and work with that data. Because these are the 2 parts that you need for AI. You need huge compute power, and the other side, you need data to fuel your intelligence. So, and this was the main reason why it went up. What have we seen over the last 30 years, and where can you apply AI in general? Well, the easiest way to look into this is to think about 4Ds, 4D tasks of humans, which is difficult tasks, when there's a lot of data, where with a human eye or with an Excel sheet, you can't see anything in there. Well, AI loves it, so lots of data. Second task is dull task, repetitive tasks. You know, if you have an invoice and you need to type it over from one system into another system, from your e-commerce system into your SAP system, it's a repetitive task. Give this to AI. AI will use text recognition, image recognition, and automate this with less errors than a human. Dull tasks, perfect task for AI. We also have dirty tasks. You know, if you have a waste management environment where you need to get out the batteries in order to avoid explosion, for example, well, we can't see this with our human eye. But for example, we're using X-ray cameras and image recognition on this, you can do this. This is not your topic, but I'm just mentioning it to make my 4Ds complete. And then dangerous tasks. For example, we are in Netherlands, there's a lot of windmills. Well, if you want to detect corrosion on top of it, you can either send an engineer, that's quite dangerous, or you can just use a camera who will detect corrosion. That's a very good task where you can take it away from humans in order to avoid dangerous environments. So these are the 4 tasks. So if you wonder where can you use AI, think about those 4 tasks. Now, they've been around for a long time, but what you see as well, if you look at these examples, we've moved on from the original definition. We've moved on from saying, well, AI is just the automation of the human brain. We started to create autonomous systems, just like our human body is an autonomous system. Because what do we have? We have different sensors. We have our eyes, our ears, we have sensors on our skin. They are automatically connected to the brain. Our brain analyzes what it needs to be done and sends out that answer to our actors. This is our autonomous body. Well, to be very honest, we've digitalized the whole part. We have started to use sensors, we have started to use autonomous data streams, also on our websites, send them straight to the AI system, to the algorithm, and from the AI system, we are creating autonomous environments. And I was very happy to see it also this morning, that in the growth, in the future plan of Intershop, we also are going to autonomous systems. This is the world where we're going to get into. So we're going to, at some point, remove humans from the loop. That's at one side a little danger, because after all, this artificial brain, which is here, the blue box, has become a hidden technology. And so we need to do everything to make sure that you really understand how it works and how it doesn't work, in order to make sure that you understand as a human how you can collaborate with these autonomous systems. Okay? Now, what does that mean to e-commerce? Because that's, after all, the world where you're in. Well, I was very happy to be able to listen into the previous presentations, because, in fact, I can just rely on it right now. AI, where it will help you in e-commerce, is to balance out the two challenges that you have. One challenge that you really have in this world is your customer experience. Customers are king. They're just coming in through all different types of channels, at what point in time that they want, through different devices, etc. You need to cocoon them. But at the other side, you have a product-centric organization. When I looked at your website of Intershop, you see these two keywords appearing. It seems very easy when you see it like this, but to be very honest, to balance out I need to click hard, to balance out those 2 points is very difficult to do with transactional systems. Just think about next best action, next best offers. That's a very customer-centric approach. I have my line of customers, next best action, next best offer is by customer. But I have a product-centric organization with millions and millions or thousands and thousands of products. That's like this. Well, AI loves this, because it looks at it as a mathematical matrix who will optimize it from a metrics point of view, not from a line point of view. You can say, well, that seems very exciting, but how do we start? Because is this the same if we are going to start with it as with like an ERP system or an e-commerce platform? Well, it's not. The good news is that AI, if you become a data-driven or an AI-driven organization, you do this in a very agile way. It was already mentioned before, you're going to actually start with a challenge, an objective you give yourself. And the objective from day one is not to balance it out, but it's to work on very tiny KPIs you want to reach. I want to improve my conversion ratio online. I want to decrease my churn. So these are the objectives you're setting yourself. From there, you're going to look into what data do I need for this? Do I have this data available? Is the data quality of the data good enough? And based on that data, you're going to create insights. Insights to then use into your customer interactions, but you're going to measure the impact of your interactions, because sometimes they work, and in some other context, they don't work. What works in the Netherlands might not be working somewhere else in the world. So you need to measure, and it's only when you measure that you can improve your business. And in fact, that wheel that you see in the middle, that needs to go around and around and around and around. Each time you get a new data set, you can create new insights. From these new insights, you create new interactions, internal or external. You're going to measure it, and then you're going to improve it. And that's how you drive a data-driven or an AI-driven organization. It's not a big bang after 3 years to switch off one system and the other system. It's an agile approach towards it. Okay. Now, in order to be a little bit more specific to what it means, and also to be honest, AI or advanced analytics, as it's sometimes called less sexy, it has been around in e-commerce for a while. Amazon, bol.com, Office Depot have used it. But they mainly used it on very structured data. Structured data means it's data that you can put into table format. What's new in the whole story since the last couple of years is that now in e-commerce context, you can also use it on unstructured data. Let me give you some examples. So these are basically the 4 boxes that I would like to cover. You have internal focus, so it's a reduction of cost, increase of revenue, external focus, customer focus, structured, unstructured data. Just first example, it was mentioned by one of the partners before, is personalized pricing, dynamic pricing. It is an internal focus because you want to, you increase your margins. It's very structured data. It's a very easy task for AI, sometimes a very hard task for a human to do, based on the huge set of data that we have. Reduction of payment fraud. This is a case of MasterCard and also Visa is using it. Because what can you do is, the fact is that you now also have new data sets. You don't only have the data set from your e-commerce platform, but you also have your location of your laptop and your mobile phone of your customer. Well, MasterCard and Visa, what they do is just before a transaction, they're going to quickly check the distance between your mobile phone and your laptop. Because if I leave my MasterCard here on the table, you have both sides of it. You can go online and you can buy something with it because you have both the number and you have the backend where the code is on there, which basically means you can easily commit fraud with my credit card. But by checking the location of my laptop and seeing that it's in a distance that's very remotely from my iPhone, there's lights going up at MasterCard saying, ask an additional question. What's the family name of your mother? The person won't be able to answer it, and I won't give it to you either. So, next in line, external focus, customer experience, personalization of the website. You can say, well, this is not new. No, but the fun thing is that it's the company who can give the feeling to the customer that it's not too pushy, it's not irritating the customer, but it's inspiring the customer that gets it right. For the people here from Netherlands, we have bol.com. Well, that bol.com has been trying this out for years, so the good thing is if you're only starting now, you can learn from those who have been there before. Bol.com is personalizing its websites on 4 different ways when you arrive on it. It's driving the website based on your past behavior, because they know what you've been buying in the past. It drives the website based on your current behavior in the session while you're online. It drives the website based on customer service background information that they have from you. Maybe you're moving, etc. And, that is very interesting, it also drives the personalization based on the stock inventory. Because sometimes you might have overstock and you want to make sure that it also goes out. So when, as a customer, you come to that website, you don't have the feeling it gets personalized based on your last click behavior, not it's too pushy based on your previous behavior. So, and that's a very sweet way of doing it, all based on AI. Okay? And last example is the customer service help desk. You can say, well, we're going to put chatbots. That's not my use case. The use case here is the fact that in the voice of the customer, because it's unstructured data, voice is unstructured data, you can detect if a customer is lying or not. I've been buying something online and I've not received my product. You have no proof that it hasn't been received. You see the payment, but you have no proof it hasn't been received. But in the voice, you can actually hear if somebody is lying or not. You can hear the emotions in there. So if you now call to a call center and somebody says, or the answering machine says, this call can be followed for training purposes, you're not training a person, you're training the bots in order to make sure that they know what is your sound of your voice when you're not lying compared to the voice when you're lying. Last in line, something which was mentioned before, so I was very happy to see it. Spare parts. I mean, I think we all struggled at one point in time to find the right part number in order to order something. Well, now with the image recognition of systems, spare parts through image recognition is going to be the future way of personalizing the website, personalizing the customer experience, in which you actually are going to benefit both internal selling and external customer experience, because you actually help the customer, but also your sales. Now, these are just examples in the 4 different areas. But we've mentioned already before, it's not about giving it all to the algorithms and to the data, Because to be very honest, there is a very strong task for e-commerce specialists in the room to combine your knowledge with these data platforms. AI projects in e-commerce don't fail on data and technology. They fail on people and processes and understanding what translation you have to make. It was also mentioned before. Let me just give you the example of customer loyalty. If you want to increase customer loyalty online, what you need to do is you need to make sure that the customer finds what you're proposing to him interesting from a context perspective, content, but also from a timing perspective. And it's only when you get both of them right, so the timing of your proposition plus the context of your proposition, that the customer is going to accept it. Get one of those two wrong, the customer is going to be annoyed. So this seems very easy, but what is accepted for one company is not the same acceptance as for another company. So that is something that's very specific to each other's brand. Getting the timing right and getting the context right. We all know examples, and I really urge you to look at it when you're going online. For example, you're going to go on vacation, you go to booking.com, you look for a hotel in Italy. During months, you get this hotel in Italy. Content right, timing wrong. Opposite way around, we know a lot of companies who are actually personalizing their websites based on the fact that we are there active on it right now. It might come in very intrusive. The timing might be wrong, but the content might be right. So it all depends, but you need to have both right in order to get on. Okay, when you know this, let's go one step further. Where is then AI collaborating with the people? Well, on three parts. First of all, how is the process? It's you listen to the data, what your customer leaves behind. We're going to move away from the stomach feeling, from the subjective feeling. We're going to listen to where the customer is. We are going to get insights on it, and we're going to create our actions. It was mentioned before that the first part on this is a 360 customer view. We've all been in there for a while. We know that we have our CRM systems with contact and response history, social demographic data. That's not new. That has been there before. But the new data streams on which AI brings you a lot of value is what you have in e-commerce, and that's the online click behavior. You need to know in the online click behavior, you see the psychological state of a person. Tomorrow it's Friday night. I've had a very busy week. I'm in a compulsive buying disorder modus. I will go to an e-commerce platform and I will buy shoes. It's the way it is. I see some people, women reacting. Men, you can go and buy toys for boys. It's exactly the same. We are in a compulsive buying disorder modus. Where can you see this as a data scientist? You see this on the speed of clicks. You see this on the way people come on the website, etc. But if you're in a compulsive buying disorder modus, you can, in fact, you can start playing with the pricing because the person is going to buy anyway. Opposite way around, on Saturday morning, it starts raining. I have some spare time while waiting on the hockey club. I start going online. I'm just in a surfing modus, just getting inspired with what I see online. You see this in the data. So what can you do then? You start playing with the fact that there's only one in stock, that the shipping costs for me today are zero. You're trying to bring that person into a buying modus. Location-based data plus online behavior data is an immense amount of gold for AI and also for you to get the right interactions. The interactions, don't worry, the techniques that exist for seeing value in there have been around for more than 30 years. A shopping basket analysis was done 20 years ago, only on offline data. What's the difference? The technique is exactly the same on online data, only the power of the compute is there to do it real time, while the customer is still on your website. So you imagine earlier on we had our loyalty cards. When we went through the checkout of a brick and mortar store, only back then the data was going over to the central headquarters to analyze and to personalize my next experience. Well, the analysis is exactly the same, but we do it while the customer is still in the touch point. So that's in fact good news. So all the techniques can continue to be used. That's where AI comes in and where you will see a lot of partners active and also in the sessions this afternoon. Whereas the interesting part is when you have the data, which is a cost, AI, the cost, is when you are able to do this and put it in the right action. Right action on an e-commerce site is making sure you understand why the person is there and what he's doing. Understanding the person means that either you know the user of the platform, or you know the context, or you know nothing of it. It's the first time the person comes online. Based on where the person finds itself, or the customer finds itself in this quadrant, you're going to do other personalization techniques using AI. Either you don't know his context, you don't know the person, you can only do generic recommendations. You know the person, but you don't know the context why he's there. Well, at least from your background information from the customer, you can personalize, and so on. You get in. I see a lot of people taking pictures. That's fantastic. You can do this, but you can also get all the slides. I don't. It's your, it's your slides. Okay. I would be wrong to say that this is the holy grail of AI. And I could easily spend another half an hour talking about more and more AI use cases that are bringing a lot of value. But, and that's also part of my book, this is where it also slightly goes wrong, because it's an unbalanced story. AI does a lot of good things and will continue to bring a lot of value, but there are some attention points. What you see here is the result of Amazon. Amazon has been in e-commerce for a very long time. Amazon has had to switch off 35% of their models last year because the context of the world had changed. So what I'm saying is, well, the fact is that such an AI brain is trained on a certain context. And if that context changes, you have to get your brain out, retrain, and bring it in. One of the partners before said it as well. It's not because an algorithm is doing bringing very good results on a certain KPI in company A, it's going to do exactly the same in company B. You have to retrain the algorithm based on your environment. But also, if you take it a little bit wider, outside of e-commerce, autonomous vehicles starting to slow down. IBM is stopping with facial recognition. Google is firing somebody last week because he dared to say that AI is reaching human intelligence. So what's going wrong? And while I'm giving these sessions where I will explain you what is actually happening, what you need to know is that my dear colleagues, the engineers, actually, they're starting to misuse it already. So while we're still explaining to the external world how AI is working, you have to understand that those who understand it, the engineers, they already find ways to go around it. In e-commerce context, they're already creating bots that will actually make sure that the KPIs you're trying to reach are actually, the bots can actually go around it. Or even, for example, you can see Facebook. Facebook has created pullovers that while you're walking past security cameras, you're no longer detected as a human. You go like, well wait a minute, what's happening here? So while we're still trying to understand it, those who understand it already know how to go around it and beat the bots. So this is something I need to explain to you as well. Let's go back now to where I started. Let's go back to that original dream. The original dream was to create systems that were going to replicate human thinking. We have moved on too fast, so this has too easy left the labs before it was finished. You have to imagine medicine has had 3,000 years as a scientific discipline. We've only had 70 years. So what have we done? We have created systems that only look at it from a profit side. So this middle line. So we've created technology that only looks at profit. We didn't look at systems, we didn't look at the system from their impact on the people and on the planet. And that is something, and if we want to make sure that AI is going to land correctly in our society, that we take into account. Is this abnormal for technology? No. Think about the cars, 1950s. It was only looking at profit. It was bringing us faster from here to the beach. It's only later on that we say, well, wait a minute. This consumption of this car is not very good for planet. We need to work on the motor, one side. On the other side, we said, well, we need to create some rules and some regulations and some audits on these cars in order to make sure that there is going to be less accidents. So also here, any type of technology first lands in the society with an economical profit point. It's only later on we're squeezing it between the people and the planet. So that's what we need to do. And in order to do so, we need to actually look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the bad, and the ugly, 3 parts. The good is, look, we try to replicate human brain. Doesn't work like this, trust me, I will show you. Bad is, business hasn't done a lot of effort to understand how it works. I will explain this. And the ugly is, we live in a world without a regulation for AI. Everybody can do what they want. There is no regulation, there's nobody stopping. So where is the accountability? And this is the part that I will be covering. First of all, the good. So the good, as mentioned, is the fact that we had this original dream to recreate human brain. However, where are we, anno 2022? Well, if I would have here, a human brain, and here I have an artificial brain, I can easily say that artificial intelligence is outperforming human brains on a couple of points. Again, what I mentioned is if there's a huge data set with different dimensions, a lot of rows and columns, with our human brain, we are blocking. Give this to AI. If you have the compute power, it finds it fantastic. It sees correlations in there much faster than what we do. Also, the accuracy which AI can learn is much higher than what a human can do. Think about skin cancer. If you have a system that detects it, it will be more accurate than what a dermatologist can do, because the number of images it can work on to learn is much higher than what a human can do in his life. Also, I still have to sleep at night in order to make sense the next day. AI can continue to work as long as it has a battery or it has electricity, it continues to work. So these are a couple of things where we say AI, fantastic. It's going to stick around in our world, it does things much better than we do. But think about the other parts of our human brain. Think about the fact that, look at the storage of my brain. I can drive a car, I can speak, I can do image recognition, I can do so many things with little energy and a very small part. Additionally, I do parallel processing of my sensors. We will soon see that we are not there yet. And many other, many other parts where human intelligence is still outperforming artificial intelligence. There's only on one part we both fail. One part that's related to diversity and inclusion topics. Remember how we're going to use data and decisioning from the past in order to train that brain. Well, our human decisioning errors, the fact that we might not like a certain skin color or a certain gender, etc., these human errors are in that data. If we are using that data to train our systems are biased. So if you want to debias systems, you have to start with the human, not with the system. There are companies that are now using AI in HR context to see which manager is biased. Because you can't see it in a human brain, but AI can point out if there's bias. It cannot solve it. We need to rely on humans. And noise. Noise in the data is, if I'm in court and I see a certain case on Friday afternoon, I decide, okay, in certain case I say, well, here you get 6 months and you have to pay 15,000 euros as a fine. Exactly the same case on Monday morning, but a different person. I'm in a different mood. I just say, well, next time, you just be careful because next time I'm going to give you a fine. One situation, 2 different human decisions. AI can't handle this. You have to think about this, not to train your systems like this. Okay, let's go deep dive in that brain. And in order to do so, I have a little problem with the clicker. I think the battery is flat. I'll try this. Okay, let's look into AI through the eyes of an algorithm, because that's what is never done. I'm going to use an example from the 80s. And it was the very first examples on image recognition. That's the easiest use in a full room. If you look to the left, and I would ask you, what is this? You will say this is an 8. And this 8 could have been a bit more to the left, a bit bigger, a bit smaller. It's easy. We understand the concept of an 8 as a number. It's easy for us as human. AI is not a human. It doesn't understand concepts. It needs a digital way to represent what's to the left. And the digital way is just saying, well, let's split it up in pixels. And a 0 means white, 265 is black, and everything else is gray, with different levels of gray. Okay, so to what 8 is to us is 8 to computer. We don't understand the right, the computer doesn't understand the left. But so this is the way AI looks to the world. And in the meantime, it looks at pixels that are much higher in resolutions, and then also in colors. But if you know this now, without going into the formula behind it, you also realize that looking at these stop signs, which is something very easy for a 3- and 4-year-old, saying this is a stop sign, AI starts lacking common sense. Because when it starts analyzing its pixels, it comes across 2 stickers, a black sticker and a white sticker. I say, well, I didn't see this in my training set. My stop signs never had these stickers, so I don't know what I'm looking at. This is how AI works. You can say, well, Mieke, you're exaggerating. It's always good to use a video. Here you see a student in Leuven showing exactly that principle. So he is using a pixel image in front of him. When he turns it around, the camera sees him as a person. I said, well, that's clearly a person. When he turns it around, the camera does no longer what it's looking at. It does no longer recognize this as a person. Remember the Facebook pullovers I was mentioning? Well, these images, there's about 6 or 7 of them. If you use them in your image and in front of your image recognition system, AI no longer knows what it's looking at. So please go ahead, download those pictures, put them on your T-shirts, on your glasses, etc. Walk in Amsterdam, you will not be detected as a person. AI does not know. Do we engineers care? We are already on the next thing. We don't care that we have these little errors in our systems. But that's a fact. Okay? Lacking common sense. Second part, concepts and abstraction. Again, go back to your 3- 4-year-old, ask him what's the real snowman. It's clearly that the child will say, well, it's number 2 and it's number 4, even if 4 is turned around. Think back through the eyes of an algorithm. An autonomous vehicle is not stopping in front of 2, if you would only have the camera. Because the pixel analysis shows you that there's no difference between 2 and 3. You need additional sensors, like a warmth sensor, in order to make sure you understand that it's in fact a child and not just a snowman. Because the system has been trained that when these pixels appear, it's a snowman, and a snowman will never cross the road. Simple example of showing you that concepts and abstraction are not known. Mieke, prove yourself. I will do so. Little video. Oops. This. Just very sorry, but this. Okay. Something wrong, but anyway. So the fact is that if you want to show that the concepts and abstraction are not known, you need to realize that when you're getting these on your website, or when you're trying to go to a website and you get these, what you're actually doing is you're training systems in order to understand the concepts in our world. This is in fact Google Car, who came back from their trips saying, we've encountered some situations in this world that we don't understand. But Google says, well, we're not going to hire somebody and making sure that we train this on concept. We're just going to ask the external world to do this for free. So we'll just put this on the website in order to make sure we will just say to the people from, oh, we want to see if you're a robot or not. In fact, they're not checking if you're a robot or not. What you're doing, you're training the Google systems to help understanding the concepts on our world. Next time you get them, try to understand why Google image recognition didn't get it right. To the left, you see the question, what is a road sign? Well, a road sign, clearly to us, it's the green and the white letters. But if you look at the bus, you see that there's also a sign, green with white letters. For us, it's clear to say, well, this is not a road sign, that's a sign on the bus. Look through the eyes of an algorithm, analyze the pixels, it's exactly the same. Yeah, so next time when you get these, think about it, how you're helping the world or AI system understanding concepts and abstraction. Okay, next in line. Are there people with Teslas in the room? Any Tesla? Normally in the Netherlands, we have a couple of Teslas. Yeah, so I would keep your hands on the Tesla for a while. I'll explain you why. Our brain is combining sensors just as we are born. We don't have to be trained for this. We don't have to go to school for this. AI, at the moment, is in a world where every sensor is trained independently from each other. And then these sensors bring their answers together, and the autonomous decisioning system will say, well, what it has to do, to stop or to go on. I have made an exercise of it each time when there's a Tesla accident to understand later on as an engineer what happened. And also, I'll show you and explain this to you. This is a weird accident that happened recently, you can see the date, where a truck was fallen over and it had a white roof. But it was on a very bright day, so the light this, in the sky was also white. So you imagine back again that algorithm that looks through these pixels, it sees white, 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 white. Camera says, I don't see anything. It doesn't see the difference between the white roof and the white sky. Then you can say, but my Tesla has radar. And that's correct. The radar sees that there's an object with metal on there, but we also know that the radar isn't always accurate because the fact is that there's other objects on that road, etc. So what does a Tesla engineer do? He says, well, if the information comes in and there's a conflict between two sensors, let's think as a human. We get in the weather data, it's a bright day, and let's get in the date and hour. It's between 9 and 5 o'clock. On a bright day, between 9 and 5, why should we doubt about the camera? Let's give priority to the camera. So this is what happened. So a human rule was put on top of a conflict between two sensors. So what you need to do is you basically need a technique which is called sensor fusion, where you do the same as what we do in our brain. We get all the data from our sensors in, and we analyze it all together instead of independently from each other. What I will show you here is a video where normally you will see to the left side just a camera, and on the right side you see a camera, but combined with an infrared camera. And have a look at the difference. So this is an independent sensor analysis or combined sensor analysis. It's exactly the same video. Do you see how you start seeing the bicycle to the right, and you don't see it to the left? This is sensor fusion techniques. That's making sure if you get data in from different sets, that you can combine it and analyze the complete situation instead of the individual situation. We continue. We're growing up. We're 3, 4 years old. We are going to school. What we learn is we start to collaborate with people, making sure we start to understand each other and put ourselves in the state of mind of each other. Okay. Example of Tesla again. And it's not that I hate Tesla. We have these examples with other autonomous vehicles as well. We are going to CES. You guys are in ICT, so you understand that CES is the Valhalla of the show where all the latest technologies are being shown. Well, you have to understand that at the moment, our autonomous systems are trained in environments where they meet their autonomous friends. So autonomous cars meet autonomous cars. BMW will meet the Tesla. And that's where they're trained. But autonomous robots meet other autonomous robots. Autonomous drones meet autonomous drones. But those worlds haven't come together yet. What you see here is that an autonomous car, a Tesla, was driving 50 kilometers an hour. There's an autonomous robot crossing the road, but they've never learned that they could actually appear in the same world. So the car didn't see the robot didn't see the car. At the moment, that's where we're in. So if you think about autonomous, for example, crossings, if you have autonomous bikes with autonomous cars and autonomous, for example, road signs, they are not yet combined with each other. We're working on this, so this is the world we're in. For me, a very important one, especially to business, especially to e-commerce, is the fact that even though AI is able to see very strong relationships in data, correlations, a correlation is not always a causality. A causality is much more than just having a correlation. I'm making a fun example here because media doesn't always understand that difference. It's not because the corona numbers were going up in March, the first lockdown, and companies were selling more toilet paper, that there was corona in toilet paper. We understand this as a human. AI just sees a correlation. Correlation is not a causality. What does it actually mean? Well, use AI for seeing correlations in big, huge data sets, but use your human brain in order to see if there's a causality or not. Okay, because AI won't do this. AI does not do the reasoning part. What we do with our frontal cortex, AI is not doing it. For those reading Kahneman, thinking fast, thinking slow, so AI is the thinking fast part, but the thinking slow, where we reason, this is where your strategy of a company is, where your objectives are defined, where your KPIs are defined. This is not yet done through AI. So use AI where it's needed. That also brings me to the first part, where I would say AI, to be very honest, is at the level of a 1.5-year-old. It does a couple of things. It does some things better than we do. Be honest, what a 1.5 can't do. But all the other parts, collaborations, etc., on this we still need human intelligence. It's not AI, okay? This is also the main reason why the Google person was fired, because AI specialists know that this is the level of maturity that we have. Next in line was the bad mentioned. The good was it works differently. The bad is business hasn't taken time to understand how it works. And for me, that's a very important one. I'm going to be using the most common mistakes made by CEOs, CFOs when they talk about AI, with a lot of respect. But so it's the things I hear over and over again, which I would like to demystify. And I'm going to demystify them using one slide. I'll take you with me on a storyline. Let's say that they're asking us to create here in this room the best running restaurant. And what we are going to do together, that's the objective. We are going to analyze the restaurants in the neighborhoods. We are going to understand what the type of visitors would be for a restaurant. And based on this, we make a decision. We make a decision that seems to be lacking of pizzerias here, so we're going to make a top pizzeria. And this decision then allows us to say, well, which ingredients we need, which ovens we need, which time of cook we need, but also the fact that we need some people bringing those pizzas to our customers in order to make sure that we get the feedback. Pizza is too hard, too slow, too warm, too hot, too big, too hard. Whatever the feedback is, it needs to come back to the kitchen in order to make sure our kitchen can continue to run and our pizza restaurant is a good restaurant. If I say it like this, people go like, well, where is this story going? This is so normal. Well, as normal it is to run an AI project. First of all, let's make the difference. AI starts from a challenge that you define, not from the fact that you're having data. The amount of calls I'm getting, Mieke, you're going to be happy we found more data, is immense high. That's the same as saying, Mieke, we found some ingredients. I can put a table up here with ingredients. Are we going to be able to cook something? Yes. Let's be honest, yes. If we get a lot of ingredients, we are going to be able to cook something. Does that automatically mean that it's going to be our best running restaurant? No. Many more things are needed. So having data is a cost. It's not a profit. Data degrades. Food degrades. There's a quality in it, etc. So think about this. Second in line, people say, well, we're going to start with AI, and so we need a data scientist. You know, Mieke, and these are literally calls I'm getting, we hire them straight from university. We give them a big car, so in Belgium you get cars when you start working. We give them a big car, and so we are all set for our AI project. Well, that's the same as saying, we've just hired the best Italian cook. I'm going, yeah, that's fantastic. You will need this if you want to have a good running restaurant. However, to be very honest, this cook won't like cutting the vegetables. He will do this, he can do this, but will this give him energy? No. 80% of the time in your AI project, you will spend on cleaning data, making sure that the data is complete, understanding your data, etc. This is another type of profile. That's not a data scientist, that's a data engineer. So invest in data engineers when you're going to start an AI project. Don't just take a data scientist, because he won't stick around. After 6 months, the guys leave because they don't get energy from it. Next in line. When I go back to a company where we've done a workshop, and I ask them, how is it going? They said, oh, Mieke, we found more data, and we're creating next model already. I'm like, okay, but what's the feedback of your model? How is it working? Is the context still right? Oh, we don't have time to measure, Mieke. We're already on the next one. Even bol.com made it as a mistake. We're already on the next one, Mieke, you're going to be happy. No, we are not happy. Because that's the same as just creating a pizza and just throwing it in the room without wanting to have any feedback. And already working because you found more ingredients. You don't do this in your restaurant. Don't do this in your AI system. This feedback from your AI system needs to come back in order to make sure you adapt your data, you retrain your models, etc. Maybe a last one. It's also something I heard recently from a CEO. He said, well, Mieke, we couldn't find any data scientists, and we want to go fast, we want to make money. We just got a model trained on the internet. We just bought it, plugged it into our operations. That's the same as saying we're going to heat up a Dr. Oetker pizza. Because you don't know the ingredients, you don't know where it was made, how it was done, etc. You're going to serve this to your customers. Will they eat it? If they're very hungry, They will eat this Dr. Oetker pizza. Will they come back? Most likely not. You can use pre-trained models as a starting point, but that doesn't mean that they're actually going to be working for your context. Just retrain them on the context you're, etc. It's a very important one. So again, in a nutshell, I can give more examples like this. If you don't do it in your restaurant, don't do it in your AI project, because the likeliness you're going to fail is very high. You need to know that 85% of the companies at the moment start one or the other AI project. Only 25% of the companies can put AI into operations. And the biggest drop is because of this one slide. Not understanding the importance of internal people and processes in order to run AI. AI does not fail on having data or having technology. A restaurant doesn't fail on having ingredients or having a good cook. It fails on not having the people aligned and the processes behind. Okay? For me, it's a very important one. Next in line, the ugly part. We are living in AI in a world with no regulation. And think about our car in the 1950s, no regulation. We can do whatever we want, we can drive wherever we want, there is no regulation. There's another important fact to this, is that AI is still in the hands of engineers, and engineers like to help with technology. Now, what happened in the last couple of years is that companies wanted to start with AI, and you will see this as well. You go back and you say, I'm all excited, I'm going to start with AI, but I don't have the data. I don't have the data yet. Engineers heard it a couple of times, and they said, well, that's no problem. Let's do something about this. Let's create auto-generative algorithms. Auto-generative algorithms are algorithms that create data. So just imagine, and you can find it online, you upload all the music from Beethoven, and you ask the AI system, well, based on all the music you've learned, what's the unfinished symphony from Beethoven? AI will go like, ooh, version A, B, C, D, E, in 1 minute. Unfinished symphony from Beethoven. I'll load up all the Harry Potter books. Ask, what is the unwritten Harry Potter book? One press on a button. Poof, here's the next Harry Potter book. The biggest problem of Amazon is that they do no longer know which book has been written by a bot, which book has been written by an algorithm. It also helps in retail, also in e-commerce. If you want to have different pictures of your product, you don't want to have a photograph who takes all different types of pictures. You give this to AI. AI will give you all different sides of your, all automated. So there are many good examples why and where these auto-generative algorithms would work. You also have fun examples, where you say, well, upload your picture, and on one press of a button, make a zombie out of it. And even myself as an engineer, I get inspired by this. I'm like, oh, this is cool. What a great auto-generative algorithms we have. Until I realized that exactly the same algorithm was actually used at the moment in order to make sure that if you take a picture, for example, from a cancer tumor, and you have to wait 2 days before you can see the specialist in order to define the date of your operation, and you go like, well, we want to have an operation next week because my summer holidays are coming on, you can actually pay companies right now that will use my algorithm that I've just shown to change your tumor. Cybersecurity and AI don't go hand in hand, so they change a picture of the tumor, put it back into the file in the hospital. You arrive the next day with your specialist. He opens it up, he said, whew, that isn't looking very good. I need to give you a prioritization on your operation. Also, car insurance. While car insurance is still automating their process of claims. I remember, at the moment, if you have a car accident, you have to take, at the moment, you can take pictures, you can send it over. Car insurers are doing something very good. They said, well, let's look at customer experience and automate that claim processing through image recognition. Let's define how ugly the car accident was and how much money we should repay. Well, at the moment in Belgium, you can pay companies and say, well, I only had a little scratch on my car, but I actually would really love to have a new car. You pay this company a little amount of money. They will just use these deepfakes that I've just shown in order to change your picture. The car insurance company doesn't see anything. They pay you out for a full new car. The biggest problem is the fact that deepfakes and this type of technology is in an open, uncontrolled world out there, also entering e-commerce at the moment. As mentioned, it's on image, but it's also on voice and will be on many more things. So the fact that our voices are now being stored in databases in order to be used by not the very good people to get a repayment or a payment or whatever you want to have, it's at the moment a fact. What do we need to do about this? Because it's very helpful to say this. Well, we need to rely on Europe, you would say. Well, Europe, to be very honest, has created a European AI Act. So you as an ICT company, in 2 years' time, you have to explain your sustainability impact of your AI. You have to show how you can make it more energy efficient, because AI at the moment isn't energy efficient. But you also have to apply the European AI Act. European AI Act, you can find it back. It was announced last year in April. It will be activated in 2-3 years. You will have to explain as a company which data you used, who the person was who trained the system, how you're retraining your system, etc. Not a big deal. There will be companies, service companies who will just be focusing on this. But why am I saying this? Because the fact is that Europe has created this act to recreate the trust in AI systems for the coming time. And the way they've done it is they've selected the trust, they've categorized it in 4 different levels. The top level is what we see in China, social scoring, not done in Europe. Europe says we don't want to have any of these type of systems out there. Second layer is where they say, well, attention point. If you're going to create systems and you're going to use them in HR context, or you're going to use them in education context, you need to do an assessment in order to make sure we can tell you yes or no. Funny thing is, you can do your own assessment. So it's like going and you have to check your car, and the government would say, well, we don't have time in order to check your car if it's a good quality. Please check your own car and let us know if it's still okay. You wouldn't do this for a car, so for AI it's very weird. But the important part here is that the example I was giving where the economy is starting to fall over, it's on the deepfakes. That's number 3 in the risk assessment of Europe. Europe does not see a problem in this. Europe said, go ahead. If you want to create a company using deepfake technology in order to influence certain decisions, please go ahead. Bottom line, that means that the full responsibility and accountability to use AI is within your company. It also means that even though you might not be the data expert on the top right corner where normally AI resides, you need to make sure from a multidisciplinary point of view, each of you gets acquainted with AI to a certain level. You have to get a certain knowledge of how it works, what it does. You have to ask yourself questions, etc. We all use microwaves. Do we know the physics behind the microwaves? I don't know, but I know how to use it correctly. I know what to use as materials in it, and I know how to put it in, and how much, what I need to select, etc. Well, to this level, you need to make sure if you're going to start in this AI journey, that you understand to a certain level, without being a data nerd or a data scientist, that you understand to a certain level from a business point of view how it works and what potential limitations are. So the full accountability is with you. And as you see, the important part that I wanted to mention is that AI is still a very narrow technology. It is not yet completely ready to be integrated into our more complex world. Remember the context specifics. But also, your role as an e-commerce specialist will be to use your social skills, your collaborative skills, in order to make sure that in this environment where AI will find its way, because it does bring a lot of value, you're going to continue to work together in order to make sure you go hand in hand with the systems. Thank you very much.